Hi, welcome to PD on the Go, the podcast that delivers bite-sized learning on communication, collaboration, and facilitation for busy teacher leaders. Tune in while you're in the car, making copies, or on your lunch break and get ready to level up your leadership skills. My name is Hallie Case, and I'm joined today by my colleagues in the Office of Professional Learning with Fairfax County Public Schools.
Hello, I'm Mary Beth Anderson.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Hazelbeck.
Hello, Erica Williams.
All right, so we're going to continue talking about how do we support teams in moving forward to make sure that they are functioning well and having an impact on student achievement. And so we talked last week about the team impact matrix as a sort of a diagnostic tool. And now we're going to get into the nitty gritty. All right, you've done your reflection. Where do you go from here? And we're going to offer some ideas for both function and impact. So let's start with function. What are some ideas that we have for moving a team forward to increase how they function in collaboration? So Erica, what do you think?
So when we think about teams moving forward, one of the big pieces are those norms, those working agreements, and really setting the stage for how individuals are going to work together in this space. And a resource that we've utilized in the past and that lots of schools and teams have had impact and positive feedback around is the affinity process. So it's like a generate, sort activity where you are utilizing sticky notes to generate thinking as far as behaviors that will support a team and getting on the same page. And then you are basically creating categories or headers that will help define some of those norms. And then after that, it is to talk about what it looks like to make those actions come to life in the space. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So working together as a team to develop those
Yes.
working agreements can help you function better together.
Right.
Because you've all had a say in what they're going to be. So Mary Beth, I think that sometimes, I'm curious what you think about this. When we talk with schools and teams about norms or working agreements, we get a little bit of an eye roll of like, yes, we know we have those.
Right.
So what would be your response to something like that, especially if it's like, we only have one new team member this year. Can't we just use our working agreements from last year? Or we were all together last year. Do we really need to do this again? What would you say to something like that?
Yeah, so often teams will say, like, let's just pull them up. Everybody good with these? Okay, good. Let's move on. And that's sort of the only time they look at their working agreements. And it's really important to come back to them often to reflect. I think even if you have a new team member, value them, that it's not that we don't care about your opinion. These worked great, so we're just going to keep moving forward, right? So I think it's important to go through that process each time because your school might have a different goal for that year as well, or maybe your students are different also. So what are you working towards with that group of students? Or how do you level up how you functioned together last year to this year? And so really thinking about the goals that you have as a team and then throughout the year revisiting those. One team that I worked with at the end of each collaborative learning team meeting or their CLT, they put in how did we adhere to our norms this time? And so they looked back at that. Okay, we did this, this, and this. Next week we want to really focus on listening, or next week we really want to focus on making sure we have our agenda made at the end of the meeting, whatever their norms were, so that they could constantly be developing and moving forward.
Yeah.
So it's not just like a check mark of like, yep, we've done it, let's move on. It's really making it a part of your team culture.
Right.
Yeah. Rebecca, what other ideas do you have for this
I
one?
love the idea of the norms and the working agreements. And I think looking at them at the end is important and even at the beginning, right? And helping each other select one that they want to be most mindful of in that meeting.
Yeah.
So the more reinforcement and looking at them that you do, the more you're likely to engage in those behaviors. And I think another thing that's really important is to consider the 4 pillars of a professional learning community. So when we think about our vision and our mission when we come together to collaborate, what is that? And having that common understanding, what are our goals, but also what are our values? What are the things that we actually value as a team? and some sort of process to generate ideas around what we value as a team, sort of sort those together, come up with some big themes, and sort of create what are our team values, and really holding each other accountable to those. So I think about teams I was on, and the strongest teams I was on really had those collective commitments. So one that I remember is that all students can learn, and it was on our agenda, and it was hanging up on posters in the room. All of the values that we held as a team and those collective commitments that we had for one another. And it sort of served as like a third point as well. So if I heard you say in a meeting, my students can't do that test, well, I could say back to you, well, one of the things we value is that all students can learn. That's one of our collective commitments. So what can we do to support with one another with making sure that that happens in your classroom too?
Yeah.
Right? So that idea of being able to hold each other accountable helps.
It's like that work really goes hand in hand with the norms or working
Yeah,
agreements.
it
Sometimes I see collective commitments on norms, right? So it's sort of like two separate things. What are our beliefs and values? Let's
Yep.
do that work together so we know why we come together as a team. And then what things do we need to have in place to work together to be able to value those and keep them in.
Yeah, I think all of those things are important because you are creating a safe space. You're creating an opportunity for everyone to be aligned in the room. All voices are heard. I mean, every bit of it really boosts the ability for people to understand each other more deeply and to work towards a common goal.
And function well.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, so in our last episode, we talked about teams that are a little bit lower on the function scale of the team impact matrix. And I think our recommendation would be if you are lower function and lower impact, start with the low function, build relationships on the team, get some things together so that you feel like you can collaborate, that you're listening to each other and safe in the space. You know what everyone values. You have a common reason for coming together. Because once those things are in place, then you can move into the impact. So we're actually going to talk about the impact on our very next podcast episode. So we'll think about what are those things you're functioning well? How do you ensure that student achievement is improving because of that? So as always, we'll share some tools that go along with today's podcast on our Instagram account at FCPS_PD. Join us next week for another episode of PD on the Go.